Hi there, I'm James McGregor, publisher of the Silicon Valley San Jose Business Journal. And on behalf of our sponsors, City National Bank, Grubb & Ellis, DevCon Construction, and United Mechanical Incorporated, I'd like to welcome you to our 2011 Economic Forecast Breakfast. 2011 is being called a bounce-back year for the Silicon Valley economy. On January 27th, we brought together San Jose Mayor Chuck Reed, Sobrato Organization CEO John Sobrato, SunPower CEO Tom Werner, and PricewaterhouseCoopers Silicon Valley Managing Partner Rob Gittings to share their thoughts on the challenges and opportunities for Silicon Valley business in 2011. What you're watching is a portion of the question and answer session that followed presentations from Paul Single at City National Bank and Dick Scott from Grubb & Ellis. I hope you find the information useful, and I hope you have a terrific 2011. So, John, Tom, and Rob, this first question is for you. You heard from City National Bank, and you heard from Grubb & Ellis, and you've heard from the mayor. After hearing their comments, is what they said reflective of where you believe we are going, and are they reflective of what your customers are telling you? And John, why don't I start with you?
Is this mic on?
Yes.
There's really been a surge in leasing interest just in the last 2 or 3 weeks since the first of the year. Amazing. I think we've learned about close to 2 million square feet of really major, large, high-tech companies that are really serious about nailing down Class A office space. I'm still concerned about the B and C market because that's, a lot of those buildings will never lease, but as far as the Class A buildings, they're disappearing rapidly. And I would agree that rents are going to increase. I'd predict by the end of the year we're going to be back in the $2.25 to $2.50 a square foot rent range.
Okay. Rob?
Because it's going to cost, as these buildings disappear and developers go back into construction, with the cost today, you just can't deliver a building for less than about $2.50 to $3 a square foot.
Rob?
I'm the accountant on the panel, right? So I look at it from a balance sheet perspective, and I think Paul touched on it briefly. I think the tech companies, especially in this valley, have hunkered down well during the last couple of years. Balance sheets are very strong. Debt has been inexpensive, and I think prudently managed, such that the ammunition is there. I think we've seen very strong earnings so far this year, and people saying in their earnings releases not just that they expect a positive next year, but that they expect to continue investing. Right now, to Mayor Reed's point, there's always the ongoing question about whether that investment happens here. But I think all the conditions in terms of cash, modest debt loads, increasing customer demand are there to be very optimistic. Okay. Especially looking at just for 2011.
Tom?
I'm very optimistic for 2011. I should say that I'm really happy we signed our lease 2 or 3 months ago because we're expanding in San Jose, and we just signed a lease a couple of months ago. And I do see things very strong in 2011. I think it's in pockets. If you look on average, the forecasts that were done earlier seem good to me, but there's great growth opportunities in select sectors. We as a company are forecasted to grow 50% last year, or we guided to grow. We haven't done our earnings call yet. And we guided to 30+% growth this year, and we're starting to talk about big growth numbers. We're talking about $500 or $600 million of growth last year, and the same again this year, a little bit more. And you saw Mayor Reed was courting some of our competitors to stay in San Jose and grow. I saw 3 that I counted, and they are growing as well. So there's pockets of extreme growth. On average, you see, I think the forecasts were very good. And what I would look to is our bank's lending. That's been the big issue the last few years. And when banks are lending, which they're starting to pick up, then the economy will pick up, and then you'll see broad-based growth.
So Tom and Rob, I want to follow up here because your 2 companies made significant investments in San Jose, expanding in San Jose, and you've all done that in the last year. Can you talk about why you did that what impacted that decision? Tom, or
You go first.
Yeah. So we just signed a lease to triple our building space in San Jose, and we'll increase our employment by almost double over the next few years. And we did that because we have a great market for our product in California. So you want to be proximate to your market. And you know that solar power was a platform of Governor Schwarzenegger and is also significantly supported by Governor Brown. So it creates a great market for us. So we want to be proximate to market. We have unbelievably great employees in San Jose. And that's incredibly important because they cost the most of any employee in the world. I mean, we're top 5 in the world. And so the employees in San Jose have to be substantially more productive than employees anywhere else in the world, and they are. So we needed to be located where, or we needed to expand where we have access to some of the best, most innovative employees on the planet. And then we need to be located in a region that gets it. So you can get a permit, that it doesn't take forever, that the leader is in sync with business. And it doesn't mean necessarily agrees with everything business wants, but it sets a tone for local government that you can work in and that you can expand in, and that's Mayor Reed. So his work and the redevelopment agency was a factor as well, and those things led to us tripling our square feet here and eventually doubling our workforce here. And one last thing I'd say is that, that's meaningful. We'll have a payroll here of between $50 and $75 million, and that money goes to employees. That's for the employees, who then invest and spend and buy houses and shop and whatnot. So the mayor gets it. He's done that math, and that was a big factor for us as well.
Rob?
I think so, as has been reported in the Business Journal, we'll be moving in late June into the Sobrato building, right? So, I mean, who wouldn't want to? It was the name that attracted us more than anything else. I'm much like Tom, right? It's so our business. First of all, I as I said at a number of opportunities, we were very pleased with how the city worked with us in terms of helping us to stay in downtown. We're in a business that's a lot about relationships. We've been in San Jose for 45 years, and obviously business trumps that. But if there's an opportunity to maintain a long relationship that has been working both ways, why mess with a good thing? So I think there was something around that, and Rue and the mayor were, and their whole team were great about that. San Jose does have a different type of allure, and we're in downtown than Tom does. Our workforce, we have about 1,200 people. Average age is 27, right? So the idea of being in the downtown area with the amenities and attractions, and we're even trying to work with the city now to help continue the redevelopment and the expansion of the activities in downtown and use our team. I'm a little on the higher end. I'm in my late 20s, right? So I'm a little higher than the average, but it's it's a great opportunity, and it's a fantastic building, right? So we're happy to be staying downtown.
So sorry I sold it.
We're happy we leased it before you started talking.
Mayor Reed, the comment about the redevelopment agencies that you read with the governor's plan to eliminate them is that a lot of critics say that they really have become the economic development departments for a lot of cities. Is that true? And then my follow-up is if that agency goes away, how does it impact your ability in the next 12 months to keep jobs and people here?
There are over 400 redevelopment agencies across the state, so I can't talk about all of them. I don't even know where they all are, but practically every city has one. And it is true that in most cities they are or have become the economic development department. That in San Jose, we have an Office of Economic Development that's on the city side, but we also have the redevelopment agency separately. And they work together, they're part of the team. But part of the funding for the Office of Economic Development on the city side is redevelopment funding. So if we don't have a redevelopment agency, if we don't have those funds, that will reduce our ability. We'll have to find the funds elsewhere to continue the staffing. It'll reduce our ability to negotiate any kind of a deal with anybody. And I just give you one example of a deal. One deal a long time ago, $6 million into a bridge and a light rail station for a little-known company growing, a little-known company called Cisco in North San Jose. That's the kind of investment that was necessary at the time to make that deal work. And with Cisco, well, 20,000 employees later, it's a pretty big company. And so those are the kinds of investments that we won't be able to make. We just won't have the funds to do that. And we have plenty of troubles all over the city where redevelopment is helpful in funding, and those are just going to go away if we eliminate the agencies. And it's not alone. I heard stories from the other Big Ten mayors. I'm starting to feel pretty good at only 11% unemployment rate after talking to the other big city mayors. Some of them are much higher. Fresno is one of the worst in the country. L.A., Mayor Villaraigosa says the only way you can get investment made into some parts of his city is with redevelopment support. Nobody will go to certain sections of a city without redevelopment support. And so other cities are worse off. That's true, but it doesn't make me feel all that much better.
So, John, I want to come back to you on this because you've done a lot of projects, involved a lot of redevelopment agencies. In your opinion, is the redevelopment agency important, and do those agencies matter anymore?
Well, I can appreciate the tension here with the county, the believing, and it's probably true, that a lot of the funds that would go into the educational system are going into investments for development. I can give you specific examples where the redevelopment agency was very helpful to our firm. Going back about 15 years ago, the redevelopment agency assembled a city block at the corner of First and Julian. And they came to us because we were able to build without financing in a very sketchy neighborhood. There was a rescue mission across the street. There was all these dilapidated buildings. So we went ahead and worked with the agency and built about 220 units. And it's called Villa Torino, and that was the first downtown apartment community. And since then, of course, there's been many, many others.
Right.
And so without the redevelopment agency, we wouldn't have taken that first step because they did the assemblage. Another assemblage they helped us with is on the corner of Julian and the Guadalupe Expressway. We bought 10, 12 acres there for food machinery. They had a bunch of old dilapidated warehouse buildings. And there were two parcels adjacent, small parcels, 10, 15,000 square feet. But they were key, and the owner was trying to hold us up. And so the redevelopment agency went in and purchased those sites, sold them to us at cost, because they always have the threat of condemnation if the owner doesn't want to play fair. And so if the agency hadn't helped us there, there'd be 1,000 less employees downtown. We have 350,000 feet there, at least to the county of Santa Clara, and they got about 1,000 employees. So the agency's been helpful. I think one thing that may change going forward, the definition of blight was really, many agencies were very aggressive in their definition, including San Jose. I mean, basically they said everything on North First Street was blighted. Well, it was basically vacant land. And so that worked, and as a consequence, all that revenue that was generated in North San Jose got invested in downtown San Jose. You wouldn't have the downtown, you wouldn't have the arena.
Right.
If it weren't for that, so it was a wonderful thing for San Jose. But I think going forward it's going to be tough to define vacant land as blighted.
Okay. Rob, the next question is for you. Aside from being the managing partner here in San Jose for PwC, you lead the technology practice group. Many of the largest employers here in the Valley had a great year in 2010. You talked about 2011 being off to a good start. We heard a little bit about that this morning. Why was last year so good for these companies, and are you expecting 2011 to be as strong?
I mean, it's a great question. When you look at the companies that we have here, including Tom's companies, we talk about local, San Jose, Santa Clara County. I think the defining characteristic for the technology industry, and you're obviously speaking very broadly from software to chips to clean technologies, is how global those businesses are, right? And how much of that economic growth comes from not just outside of the city, county, or state, but outside the United States. And I was reading one of the analyst reports that said, I think it was the fourth quarter, 50% of PC sales and 66% of mobile device sales were to the BRIC countries in Brazil, Russia, India, China. And so I think that, and even if you think of the smallest startup, social networking, software, I mean, they plan to be a global company almost instantaneously, right? So the ability to support global ambitions and have the resources to support a global expansion plan almost from the get-go are important. And I think that's what having resources and plans to stay here while growing globally quickly. And I think that's the hallmark, to be globally integrated, have your supply chain globally integrated, know your customers around the world, and be close to your customers around the world.
So Tom, you said in our economic forecast issue, which everybody has a copy of this morning, that, quote, 2010 is the first year, or was the first year of the solar decade. What does that mean?
Yeah, I should point out a couple things before I answer the question. In the picture, it was really sunny that day. There's a glare off those panels, so I am squinting. And secondly, it is nice of Rob to mention SunPower. Finally, we are a client. They are our auditors. And I noticed in his introduction, they highlighted companies, and I was thinking for sure they're going to say SunPower. And it turns out they didn't, but it's nice that he had. I think he also made a really good point, having said what I just said. And that is, as I said, there's pockets of really extreme growth, and then on average you might see 3% economic growth this year. So, of course, many of you are in the service industry, you want to go after those pockets of growth. And then you need the predictor of where are those going to be. And I think he highlighted a really good one, and that is, where do companies do business? In whether it's Brazil, India, China, there are many other countries that are growing very fast. I think it is a prerequisite for fast-growing companies to be successful in those countries, and that's a really good predictor. Even Facebook will be saturated in the United States, and the key metric for them going forward is how fast they grow in other countries. And that gets us back to the question about the solar decade. You see solar more and more in California, and it's not, when we say solar power, it's not sort of like you immediately think of a tree hugger. You think that it's actually going mainstream. You can look over at the Tech Museum and see one of our systems, and as you drive around, you'll see solar systems around on houses. Now, that's because of the last decade we've had the California Solar Initiative that's been a great incentive for the market. You need to get off of the incentives, get costs down so that we can take it mainstream, so that people like you in the audience say, I want to lower my electricity bill, and I can do that with clean tech and hopefully with solar. So that's happening. We've taken costs down by half. We're going to take them. We've guided Wall Street to taking them down by half again over the next 5 years. And as we do that, then you start to think, particularly if you can finance a system, which you can more and more, that you can be cash flow positive day one. You buy a solar system and you're making money day one. And so it becomes a mainstream decision. So it's our view that the next 10 years is really where you're going to see certain parts of clean tech explode, and the real opportunity is, and that's when we take solar mainstream, and that's about cost. Now, there's a bunch of other factors as well that I'll probably talk about later.
Well, let me follow up on that then, because I know Governor Schwarzenegger was very supportive of solar and clean energy. Aside from redevelopment, what do the changes in Sacramento mean for your business and your industry?
Mm-hmm. Well, let me comment on redevelopment, and maybe I'll cover this a bit more later as well. We are expanding in San Jose. We're building $1.2 billion fab in Malaysia, and we're going to expand in Austin, Texas as well. And if you think of what you expect, your shareholders of various companies, what you expect out of your company that you invest in, you expect them to be an economic success. So when we make a decision of where we're going to locate, it's an economic decision. And if you send the mayor in with no redevelopment funds, and you're competing with Austin, Texas, who came up with $1 million, and the state came up with $3 million for expansion, And that's money now, and near money means more than far money. It's a little tough to compete. That doesn't even begin to say what they do in a country like Malaysia, where we had our grand opening. The Prime Minister spent 5 hours with us and talked to us about economic growth and tax holidays, investments in R&D, and is making that happen. So on the redevelopment side, just think of what it takes to compete as we work our way through this. Now, having said that, Governor Brown and Governor Schwarzenegger are incredibly good for clean tech, and have been, and we believe they will be going forward. There's a thing called the Renewable Portfolio Standard, and it says to the investor-owned utilities that you need to have a certain percentage of your power come from clean tech. That is a huge opportunity. Now, the way you get that business, though, it's not handed to you. You have to compete for that business, and it's done on a competitive basis. But that is driving billions of dollars of business. We just announced some really significant contracts with Southern California Edison that will measure in billions in revenue, directly attributed to RPS, which is now 20%. We hope it goes to 33%. That is directly correlated to jobs in California. Not only our headquarters, but we have approaching 1,000 dealers, residential dealers in California. They employ anywhere from 10 to 30 people. And we have another office in Richmond that has twice the employee, or doubles the head count that we have in the Bay Area. So there's a significant employment associated with that. One more thing, there's a thing called net metering. And that is when you buy a solar system, you get credit for your power by your meter running backwards, or netting how much power you're producing. Well, there's laws on how much you can run your meter backwards. And so Governor Schwarzenegger helped make sure that that cap got raised from 2.5% to 3.5%. Will hit that cap in Northern California sometime in the next year, and so that too has to be fixed, because you could give solar power away for nothing and you won't expand because you're capped, and the utility will say no more solar. So there are things like that happen in Sacramento that are directly correlated to the market, which directly correlates to jobs in California.
John, I want to come back to you. You said last year at our Structures Awards that potentially half of the vacant office space in the Valley would never be used again. Many of these buildings have been vacant for years. What would you suggest is done with those buildings so that we do get some development and some activity around them?
Yes, not just office space, but basically we're talking about older buildings that were designed for manufacturing use, very large floor plate buildings. We all know that the software industry and the knowledge-based industry, the high value-added jobs are staying in the Valley. The globalization is occurring, and that's where the manufacturing is occurring. And so I have to commend Mayor Reed, because under his leadership, the planning department, and it was approved by the council, took this whole stretch of North First Street, changed the rules out there, and instead of 1- and 2-story buildings, I think you can build, Chuck, 10-story buildings out there now, and high density, 50 unit or so to the acre apartments. And as a consequence, several of those buildings now that were designed for manufacturing have been recycled. In our own business, we've done 12 buildings that we built years ago that we've demolished. 6 over off Meridian, where we have about a 400 apartment community ready to start construction once I make peace with Mayor Reed. And anyway, there's about 700 units over there. And then he took 4 buildings at the corner of Central Expressway and San Tomas Expressway, where we had built 25, 30 years ago 1- and 2-story buildings. Scraped those, and we're building 5- and 6-story buildings there today. So this land needs to be recycled, and other cities, I think, are following Mayor Reed's lead. I know the city of Santa Clara right now is going through a general plan review, and they've taken a lot of their areas that were designed for manufacturing and overlaying it with a residential zone. The more housing that we can build in the Valley, the more affordable all housing becomes. There's always the argument that residential is a drag on city services. But today, with the depreciated value of a vacant industrial building, the property taxes are so low that there's not a lot of revenue that goes into the county, and that helps the schools, et cetera. And so if you replace an aged, obsolete industrial building with a high-density residential project of 40 to 50 units to the acre, the assessed value triples, just like that. And the city only gets a small portion of the property tax, but it does go into our county, and that's where the school dollars come from.
Right.
And so as far as the city is concerned, the more residents that you can put in the community, the more shoppers you're going to have. And the more shoppers you're going to have, the more sales tax, which is really what Chuck needs to run his city, is sales tax revenue. So, it all works together, and I'm glad that Mayor Reed saw the light. Was it 3 years ago, Chuck? That you, 5 years? 5 years ago. Okay. Good. Well, thank you for that.
So this question is for all of you, but I'll start the answers with you, Mayor Reed. In our January 21st issue, we wrote about a joint venture between the Sobrato organization, and John, I'm going to follow up with you on this in just a second, and a San Francisco-based developer called TMG Partners on developing Pier 70. In that article, the president of TMG said, quote, "The migration of Silicon Valley companies to San Francisco will continue," end quote. Is this an accurate statement? You've talked a lot about competition. All of you have talked about that this morning. And what can the Valley do to keep the companies that we have and encourage investment here instead of it heading up the road to San Francisco? Mayor Reed?
We've always had companies moving back and forth between San Francisco and San Jose and around the Valley, but I think what's happening now with San Francisco is the social networking industry is growing, and the average age of the worker in social networking is probably even less than the 26 that Rob has. And so they tend to be very young, very single, and don't view having a house, a 3-bedroom house with a picket fence, is really important to them. And they're more interested in an urban environment. And so they like to live in San Francisco, work in San Francisco. So we have companies that are running buses from San Francisco to their employment centers here. But that's not anything new. And I think what we have to do is, we're not going to have the companies pick up and move. But as the new companies in that sector grow, that's an important market niche, an important opportunity for us. We need to reinforce our downtown. We have our own urban environment, our own amenities, and the things that appeal to Rob's workers are things that we need to do, and that's one of the reasons we're working with PwC to figure out what it takes to attract those kinds of workers, and we need to build out our downtown. And I know that one of the things that people get excited about is a baseball stadium. So we continue to pursue that. Each of those building blocks of having a vibrant, exciting, interesting downtown helps attract these young, talented, creative workers, and it's good for the rest of us as well. So that would be the number one strategy, is to provide what people are interested in order to keep those workers there.
Tom, Rob?
Yeah, a significant migration would be incredibly optimistic. But I think the mayor's got it exactly right. The thing that Silicon Valley and the Bay Area has is we have the most talented employees, technology employees in the world, and we also have the best opportunity to take an idea and turn it into money, the best infrastructure in the world to do that. And so the key determinant is, how do you tap into that? And he's exactly right. You need to crawl inside of the head of the market that you're trying to tap into, and that is that employee who perhaps just got his PhD from Cal or Stanford. So the infrastructure in San Jose is absolutely critical. I mean, if you talk to your average, I could talk to Rob since he's 25. 29, sorry. Where would you rather live? And you're not going to find a lot of them that say Los Altos or Los Gatos versus San Francisco. So I think the mayor's got it exactly right, and it's more about attracting talent, and it also gets into mass transit. If it's easy to get back and forth, then it becomes less relevant.
Sure. Rob?
I mean, I guess I would view it more as Silicon Valley colonizing San Francisco than San Francisco sort of setting off on its own, right? If you think of the social networking, I mean, industries tend to set up in communities There's, Salesforce.com has an ecosystem around it, but the cloud industry is well established in the Silicon Valley as well. Big companies, small companies, VMware, Cisco, all chasing great ideas. The Twitter is in San Francisco. Obviously, Facebook is in Silicon Valley and Palo Alto. So it's and when those companies build in South San Francisco, they don't build out. They don't build their office space like the Tonga room at the Fairmont, right? It looks like Silicon Valley office space, right? So it's a natural extension of the valley, I don't think it's a separate and distinct thing.
Okay. John?
Well, first off, our relationship with TMG, formerly the Martin Group, goes back about 25 years. All the principals were our bankers at Union Bank, so we know these guys. And basically, we're combining our financial resources, and I think the reason they're attracted to us is because of our tenant base. I mean, we built for the majors here. We built the 500,000, million square foot campuses. And that's what we envision doing at Pier 70. But, we're only one of 5 candidates, so I'm not sure we're going to win the beauty contest, but we're going to try. We're certainly not leaving Silicon Valley. I mean, the majority of our office space, R&D space, is Santa Clara and San Jose. Mm-hmm. If we build 3 million square feet up there, that's the most that the site will take. We could do, we did 900,000 feet for Apple. We could do 3 Apples up there, for example. And so we're very excited about the prospect. The Muni light rail system goes right by the site. There's condos being built in the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. It's an old dilapidated, shipping repair facility that right on the waterfront will be a big part. We're really excited about the opportunity. And in talking with our tenants, they're discovering, just like we talked about, like the mayor mentioned, that it's primarily the social networking companies. They want to hire the brightest and most talented college graduate. Mm-hmm. And these young folks aren't married. Oftentimes they don't want to buy a car. They want to hop on light rail, right, or have an apartment and be able to walk to the exciting nightlife and the cultural attractions, the clubs, etc. I think what Chuck's trying to do to bring baseball to downtown San Jose would be a tremendous boom. I mean, just look how much the downtown businesses have changed and how successful they've become as a result of the Sharks and the arena. I mean, if you could bring a basketball team to the arena, just think of all those games. I mean, that would be helpful too. So you're absolutely right on what you're trying to increase those opportunities. You might call them amenities that
to make the city more attractive.
Sure. City. So you're doing the right thing.
One last thing to add on that. After those companies start growing and they see the size of their payroll tax in San Francisco, they'll have I think they'll look south.
So, Mayor Reed, there are some important jobs that need to be filled in San Jose. There's a job as Economic Development Director here. There's the Team San Jose, I guess CVB job that's open. How long are those jobs going to remain open? And who are the ideal candidates for them?
Well, you didn't mention the police chief.
For the police chief.
That one is very important, and it is. I think the city manager is almost done with her search under the charter. It's her job to recommend a person to the city council, and then we vote up or down. She's about done with that one, so I think that one will be filled very quickly. We have started looking at the Office of Economic Development spot, but as the city changes and we're looking at our budget, we're probably going to have a different job description for that, and I think that's the first thing that we've looked at is what should that job entail. Paul Krutko did a great job for us, but he also carried the title of the Chief Development Officer as well as Office of Economic Development. We've got tremendously talented staff in that department, and so we're carrying on doing the work, but we need somebody who has got the vision, because you have to look long term. But some of the most important work is in the blocking and tackling of the everyday delivering the services. Right. After I get out to some group like this and make a big promise, somebody has to do the work. And that department needs to do that. So you have to have somebody who can work across departments and carry out that and make sure all the details get done. So that's the ideal candidate. And we have, I think, there are a lot of people that are capable of doing the job. We're not yet ready to make a decision on that. With the Convention and Visitors Bureau, Team San Jose, now there is no separation. It's Team San Jose. They currently have the contract to manage the facility as well as the marketing and sales. Dan Fenton, well, I think he's still in the job until the 31st was his last day. But that position will be filled by Team San Jose because he's the CEO of Team San Jose, so that board will make that decision. The big decision for the city is whether or not to go out with a request for proposals for a different operator, because we have those contracts and we're considering going back to the market because we've been in contract with Team San Jose. Well, it'll be 8 years or so, and it's maybe
And when will you have
it's
to
time
make
to
that
look around.
decision?
We'll have to make that decision. We've already made decisions to start thinking about making a decision, so the staff is already working on it. But to go ahead and do an RFP is a decision we'll probably make in June. But there's a lot of work that has to be done getting prepared for that. Whether or not that would be the same model, a different model, or what kind of an operation we might do. Do you combine those contracts with one contract or two? Those are all kinds of things we have to sort through in the next 5 months to begin that process.
And how will all of this impact the expansion of the convention center? Does it slow it up? Does it speed it? Or how does it?
The building is not the same as operating the building.
Okay.
So I don't think it'll have any impact on the expansion. The expansion will be driven by our ability to raise the money. The hotels have voted to tax themselves to generate the fund. We've got to issue the bonds against that money, put it together. So that will continue to move forward on a parallel track. But somebody's still got to manage it even under the construction, and that's there's obviously a relationship there.
Okay. Rob and Tom, this next question is for you. Following the State of the Union speech on Tuesday night, Cypress Semiconductor CEO T.J. Rogers was on Fox Business News, and he was asked what companies needed to invest, and he said they needed more certainty. How certain is certainty? And what types of things need to be put in place? And Rob,
You get to go first. I could talk about this for a while.
So I'll speak about sort of the numbers accounting side. I think there's been a lot of wondering about the tax structure in the U.S. And is the U.S. willing to look at their tax structure to be competitive, right? And I don't want to sort of sound like the nebbish CPA, right? But I'm a nebbish CPA, right? So, but it's for the president to come out and say, I'm willing to look at the tax structure. I know that our corporate tax rate needs to come down to be competitive with the world. There was a lot of uncertainty around that from the time before the election. So I think giving some sense about economics, because that is one of the key drivers from an economics, to Tom's point, that businesses make decisions based on dollars and cents in terms of where they build, where they develop their technology, and the numbers become astronomical quickly for these rapidly growing companies. So I think that was really important in terms of taking that idea and baking it into the tax code with an eye towards competitive tax regimes outside the world. I think is going to be really important.
Tom?
Yeah, I think TJ, who I know really well, too well on some counts, it had a really good point, and that is, if you think of an investment in a building, we depreciate a building over 10 to 20 or 30 years. So you have the expense of that building spread over time. And when you look at whether it's tax incentives, size of markets, et cetera, you have to project those over that same time frame, and then you do a net present value and you make an economic decision. If you're in a state that has a 12-month budget and changes their policies every 12 months, it becomes really difficult to do a 10 or 20-year forecast of what business is going to look like. So I think TJ was talking about the incentives to create jobs need to have staying power. Us people that are hiring are cynical of a one-time tax credit that will go away the next year. So you move into a new facility, you hire a bunch of people, and you lay them off 2 years later because your shareholders are beating you up because you're not making enough money, and you find yourself in an economic disadvantage by virtue of that one-time incentive. So that's what I think he was talking about there, and I tend to agree with that. Several other things he said I don't agree with. We have a significant disagreement on clean tech and green tech, obviously. I think there's a bit of oversimplification there. Having said all that, he was really a big deal in the development of SunPower.
And John, do you want to add to that at all? Okay. John, Rob, and Tom, this question is to you, and I want to turn the attention away here just a little bit. But each of your organizations is very involved with area nonprofits. Nonprofits, I think we have several of them in the audience today, have had a challenge the last couple of years. What are you hearing from the nonprofits that you support and are involved with? And is there any advice that you're sharing as we head into 2011? And John, why don't I start with you?
And Diane ought to take this, who is our executive director sitting at our table of our Sobrato Family Foundation. We grant around $5 or $6 million a year to local nonprofits. And what we've been trying to do is there's some nonprofit agencies that really should merge. I mean, how many agencies for battered women do you need? You know, there's probably 4 or 5 in the phone book. And to reduce that administration cost. I mean, it's difficult because they all have boards of directors and, you know, they all want to have ownership over their particular agency. So it's tough to get mergers to happen, but that's what we're trying to encourage.
Tom, Rob?
It's interesting. The mayor mentioned the sort of delay effect. I'm on the board of the United Way, which is kind of a central organization, looks at community needs and tries to either have their own programs or assist companies make grants to programs that support basic community needs. And what's been interesting is that in the first year of an economic downturn, you get the Robin Hood type grants. So companies or individuals will make individual grants targeted. Second year, less so. And by the third year of an economic downturn, there's the demand for services, and whether it's the United Way or some of the organizations that the Sobrato Family Foundation supports, you've exhausted the Robin Hood funds. The need for the services is way up. So I would just hope that as we all look to make our personal donations, right, that's now's the year not to give up, right? Because as we see the economy turning, hopefully donations will pick up. But it's this year, next year are going to be really tough years, I think, in the not-for-profit community. So remember that.
Tom?
Yeah, our company definitely believes in giving back. We have a foundation. We're active, and that's comes from me, and that comes from our employees. We did a really cool thing. We donated a large system for Second Harvest Food Bank that lowers their operating costs over 20 years and allows them to invest more in the service that they provide. Why do you pick somebody like Second Harvest? What I would say to nonprofits is, when you're going to a business, think like a business is going to think, and think what's going through their mind. Of course, there's an alignment with their mission in terms of their philanthropy, but there's also how well the metrics of your organization. And the Second Harvest Food Bank has a great expense ratio, as an example. 95% of what comes in goes to their purpose. And so those are, think like a business, because it's going to resonate with the target audience that you have. And we wish you the best by all means, because demand is clearly up.
So Mary Reed, this next question is for you. You've talked about, and you've talked about it again this morning, the importance of the city to move at the speed of business. How do you do that when you and other mayors, other governors are trying to right-size city services and headcount? I mean, how do you make that work if you haven't got as many people, but you're trying to move faster?
Our people are working harder. They're doing more with less, and sometimes less with less, because eventually, if you don't have the people, you can't do the work. So what we do in order to move at the speed of business is to make sure that we minimize the transactional friction of having multiple departments and multiple people involved. So we put together the teams, like I mentioned earlier, the jobs and revenue generation team we put together specifically to deal with the apartment buildings. But those kinds of teams are very common, where we get everybody together, figure out what the plan is, make the commitment, and then work to meet the plan.
Sure.
And we do that in a variety of ways. Probably the best example is our special tenant improvement program In the old days, we used to do serial processing. And it would take 60 days, department, 60 days to 90 days to get a building permit. Now we do massively parallel processing, and mainly we get everybody in a room, and we lock the doors, and nobody gets to leave until they're ready to issue the permits. And so we can now issue permits in hours, do it by appointment in hours or days, where it used to take months. So that is very efficient for the business, and it's very efficient for the city, because we have to do it in a way, and we have to continue to do that, and it's a question of priorities. Last year's budget, what budget we're in this year, is ugly. We increased spending for our special tenant improvement program because I viewed it as the one product line we had that was making a profit. And so we put more money into it to have more people to do that, and we're seeing the results of that with our ability to process the permits that we're doing. And as business is picking up, and it is picking up for us, we need to have the staff to do that. So we had to put more money into it, even in a down year.
So, Rob, this next question is for you. We've talked about funding and banks and lending. You work with many emerging companies. Would you just share a brief overview of the funding environment for all of these companies? What trends are you expecting to see this year?
No, it's a key part of our practice is we can't under the technical accounting rules make investments, but we work with startup venture-backed companies very early on, make significant investments in their fees and try to help them be successful. But we also work with the National Venture Capital Association to aggregate and publish the venture capital statistics. And the results for 2010 and the fourth quarter of 2010 were released last week. The results are positive. I think Paul had a chart on the venture capital investment. So 2010 will be the first year since before the economic crisis recession hit where venture capital was up year on year, and it's concentrated in to the mayor's point and to the other panelists' point in the areas we think are important. Lots of money still going into software, e-commerce, clean technology. So the areas that will develop here, and to Paul's chart, the bulk of the venture capital still ends up being spent and invested, within 100 miles or even less probably of here. But I would say also that I don't think the last 3 years, and I love Tom's view on this one, is I don't think the culture of entrepreneurship, I mean, what we always worry, and I think the mayor touched on that, is that the support infrastructure, smart engineers, bankers willing to take risks, has been damaged by the last couple of years. I don't think the money would flow in if it was. So for entrepreneurs looking to start small businesses, I think this has been a down cycle, but it hasn't had a break the back effect.
Take that to that time.
I think when you look at the news, look at IPOs, and look at acquisitions, because it's the front end of this process. If there isn't a liquidity event for the funds don't have a return, and their limited partners don't invest money in them. And the limited partners tend to be fairly focused on what the return is. And that's what you've seen over the last decade, is the net return over that decade has not been that great. So as you look to 2011, look at the IPO activity and look at acquisition activity, which appears to be picking up. I think Rob might have a better lens on that, but in both of those areas, things are picking up. And then that fuels the pump, and then you see an exit strategy, and then you're going to see a lot more money come in. Still, the best place on the planet to do that is Silicon Valley. The talent's here, the entrepreneurial culture is here, the education system is here, and mayors like Mayor Reed, who set up infrastructure that you can operate very quickly in, is here. So this is here to stay, or here certainly going to be a dominant place to do the innovation for a long time to come.
So we just have a couple more minutes, and I have one last question, and I'd like to hear from all of you. If you could make one prediction, if you were back on this stage 12 months from now, if you could make one prediction for 2011, what would it be? And Mayor Reed, we'll start with you.
If I could make one prediction, you mean one that would actually come true?
Yes.
Well, I would like the California economy to boom like it did in the past. So I'm predicting a 10% growth in the California economy for this year. That would be good for everybody.
Is that real?
That wasn't part of the criteria.
Oh,
you
okay,
gave
I'm
me.
sorry. There's fact and fiction. Tom.
Packers win the Super Bowl. I am a 49ers fan, but went to school in Wisconsin, so that's. I don't know if it's 12 months, but I think Silicon Valley increases its percentage of overall venture capital money invested, whether that's 12 months or over the next few years, which is good news for the economy and good news for the revenues eventually for nonprofits, the city, and other groups.
Rob.
I think it's been an issue that's floated around for a number of years, but the idea of cloud computing, that it's the sleeper doubling of VC investment and companies looking to really re-architect how they support their global expansion with cheaper, more efficient cloud technology.
John.
Well, I think one thing that tempered the growth in 2010 was the merger and acquisition activity. For an example, Rob's going to move into so-called Sobrato building. We were able to convince BEA Systems, one of our tenants, we had 300,000 feet on First Street, that they should buy the building. And they did. Gary Filizzetti and DevCon had tenant improvements underway. They were going to move in 1,500 employees downtown. Oracle buys it. So what happens? Not only do they cancel the building plans, they just absorbed all those people. We had another instance where we had 3 buildings leased to Siebel Systems in San Mateo, 500,000 square feet. Oracle buys Siebel, absorbs all those people. And so, we're losing jobs awfully fast because of this activity, and I think it's going to continue, unfortunately, in 2011.
If we can give a round of applause to all of our panelists this morning. I want to thank you all for coming this morning. I want to thank our sponsors again. It's going to be a great year. As I said in my opening remarks, it will be better with a subscription to the Business Journal. Thanks, everybody.